Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the second follow-up video after the INNODEM.EXE dagger from a few days ago. Today we'll be looking at the Incarnon shotgun, Felarx. You've probably heard or seen quite a few videos about this weapon already now. And this one is my take. You may have even picked up the weapon for yourself and tried it. Yes, the Incarnon form seems to be a disappointment. I have a few things to mention about it later in its own section, but today, we're going to be looking at 4 extremely different ways on how to use the Felarx's non-Incarnon form. It's actually amazingly effective, and instead of comparing which one has the highest DPS, which honestly is actually very hard to do because of how different they play, not even build, but actually play, I'll leave it up to you to decide on what best suits your playstyle. Reminder that this is technically small spoilers, so if you haven't completed the Angels of Zariman quest yet, I would strongly recommend before watching this video. So, the Felarx. It can only be obtained from Caballero and the Chrysalith. The blueprint, as all other Incarnons, is tradable if you don't want to grind, but only the blueprint. You still have to craft it. It costs 10 pinions and 15 quills to craft. Void Gel orbs are super common, so I don't think I need to explain how to farm them. Pinions come from dormant angels you wake up in missions, whereas quills have multiple sources. I recommend Halico Perimeter Exterminate if you're spamming dormant angels for pinions. Bounties for Quinn, Ravenous Angels from Armageddon, and Melika, the Zariman Cephalon are your 3 primary sources of quills. Melika is the only one that has any special condition. You need to insert a Zariman Accolade, or keys as we like to call them, into her console. They spawn within 100 meters of her always and have an audible hum as you get close. Oh, and I actually had to craft 2 Felarxes for this video. If you craft a second one, you do not need to do the challenges again. However, the evolutions will all be locked, and you still need to go to Caballero to click through all of them quickly and pick your perks. The Felarx has similar styled evolutions to our previous 2 Incarnon guns, the Fenmore and Ladum, where the INNODEM was shafted on evolutions, but was an absolutely amazing weapon. The Felarx instead probably has the literal best evolutions of any Incarnon weapon, but the weapon leaves much to be desired. It actually shares the Devouring Attrition perk with Fenmore and Ladum, the one that adds 2000% multiplicative final damage 50% of the time on non-crits, except it's called Devastating Attrition on Felarx. But this is where we stop. Felarx is extremely different from other Incarnon weapons. Not only is its Incarnon form kind of copium, which we will again discuss later, but you actually build the weapon completely differently depending on which Evolution 5 you pick. And every single one of the options on Evolution 5 are viable. Interesting, right? We actually have build diversity for once, but they play really differently as well, so we're gonna do this in reverse. I'm gonna look at the 5th evolution first and then go backwards to the 2nd, because, well, the first evolution doesn't really count. So let's get started, shall we? Evolution 5, Devastating Attrition. This shouldn't need any more explanation these days, as it's the 3rd time you've seen this perk on a different weapon. The buff is a final multiplicative, like Eclipse, which is why it's so strong, but it only boosts non-crits. So you really don't want to build any crit whatsoever on Felarx when you use this. It is worth it though, and we even have evolution perks later on that specialize around reducing crits. Ruptured Plenitude grants you 70% ammo efficiency for 20 seconds when you punch through 3 enemies. This is extremely easy to do because the primary fire mode of Felarx has infinite body punch through, and the buff is refreshable. But this only works if there are enough enemy spawns to sustain it, so generally I would only recommend using this on Steel Path and particularly endless-oriented missions that tend to have more spawns, especially survival. But more importantly, picking this perk means you can actually build for crits. Yes, crits are weaker than the 2000% multiplier on non-crits, but look at the IPS spread on this weapon. It's only 44% slash, and the base status is only 5.5% per pellet, so it's quite difficult to make the slash consistently, and combined with a 50% chance to proc 2000% multiplier, you get a lot of RNG. Ruptured Plenitude lets you build crit for hunted munitions instead, which is much more reliable. Even if the per slash tick is less, you won't have random low damage and high damage slash. Agile Executor is the option for when you don't think there are enough enemy spawns for Ruptured Plenitude. All shots fired while aim gliding or sliding gain 50% ammo efficiency. And there is an actual reason to aim glide on this weapon besides this perk, which I'll get into later on the relevant builds. So as you can see, all 3 options are viable. What does Evolution 4 look like? We have Brutal Edge. This is just a flat 10% base crit and status bump. Mods will scale off of this inflated base stat total. Pretty self-explanatory that you would only use this with the Ammo Efficiency Evolution 5 perks, and not the 2000% one, since the 2000% multiplier only works on non-crits. Likewise, if you're using the 2000% Evo 5, take the rightmost perk. It grants negative crit chance, which is a buff since our non-crits are stronger than our crits, and also gives 20% more base status chance. Also important, because it will boost our status procs on relevant builds such as Slash or Corrosive. The middle perk, Incarnon Catalyst, sucks. We aren't using the Incarnon form currently, so ignore it. But if DE buffs the Incarnon form in the future, then this may be worth a second look, but I still wouldn't recommend since the bar charges so easily. Now, how do you charge the bar if you really want to? Just shoot heads. Once 30 pellets have landed headshots, the bar is full. Press Alt-Fire to change the Incarnon form, and press Alt-Fire to change back. You can change the Incarnon form even if you haven't filled the bar completely, but forcibly swapping back to normal mode will completely empty the bar and you'll have to fill it up again. Alright, how about Evolution 3? Dual mode chamber is super gimmicky, and I strongly dislike it. Using holster reload strats may allow you to preserve the 4-meter punch through for the Incarnon form if you want to use it for that, but the primary fire mode already has infinite body punch through. While it doesn't have terrain punch through, I don't think this perk is good enough to justify slotting for that, and we don't need the 100% projectile speed because another tree already gives something similar, so skip this. Evolved Autoloader, though, is an absolutely insane evolution perk that will holster reload 50% of the shotgun's magazine per second. This works extremely well with the synth-set mods and the X-less holster mod since they stack additively, so you can reload the entire magazine in just a little over a second. And because it ticks constantly and not per second, you can actually cancel the holster reload a bit early and it will still reload almost the entire magazine. This is an extremely handy perk that I would recommend using, but we also have mounting momentum. This perk grants 10% extra fire rate to Felarx per bullet reloaded, but manually, so larger magazines give bigger buffs. It only lasts until the next reload starts, but it gives a strong enough buff that you don't need to slot fire rate at all on the weapon, saving a valuable mod slot. So it's also very worth picking. There is a bug tied to this currently where Mirage's clones will reload with you, and every clone bullet also counts for this buff, meaning your buff is 5 times larger than normal, often resulting in bonus fire rates above 500%. Now, I don't expect this to last long, so enjoy it while you can, but don't depend on it since it will most likely get patched. Now, for the final one, Evolution 2. Remember how I said that 100% projectile speed flip-flop with 4-meter punch through wasn't worth it? Yeah, that's because this right perk gives 50% flight speed buff already. This weapon doesn't have enough recoil to really justify kinetic baffle, and corrosive builds are also using Deadhead, which removes 50% of the recoil, so I don't think it's worth slotting this perk on the shotgun. The leftmost perk grants 40% accuracy while aiming, but this shotgun is already kind of like a sniper. It's not as precise as Tigris, but you will really feel how tight the spread is when you try to shoot enemies that are further away from you. This perk is completely unnecessary. And there we go. That's why we're stuck with plus 50% flight speed. It pretty much sums up all the evolutions, so why not take a quick peek at the Incarnon form? First off, it loses the infinite body punch through. That's already a really big negative in my eyes for a single target weapon. Wait, it's single target? Yep. You know those AoEs you see when you shoot it? They don't do anything. It's purely visual. I don't know if they forgot to actually give the weapon AoE or not, but it's all a lie. Now, Danielle has said on the forum that they are looking into the Felarx Incarnon, so if it actually becomes good after this video drops, expect me to cover that in a shorter video. But for now, it is objectively worse. While it is actually status viable, it loses its pellets and 20% base status on a slug is nothing to write home about. The 3.0 crit multiplier is marred by just a 20% base crit, and look at this, the weapon actually has less base damage on the Incarnon form. It only has 65.8% of the normal mode's damage, so that actually completely negates the bonus crit multiplier, since critting would just boost the damage back up to the normal mode. It also has half the fire rate. It does turn into dual pistols though, so I thought maybe it's just showing the fire rate of a single pistol, much like how Sepulchrum has an 8.2 multi-shot, so the 3.67 fire rate on it actually feels like 1.8. Now, I thought Felarx was doing the opposite, where the actual fire rate would be 3. Also, if you haven't picked this weapon up yet, the primary fire mode is full auto. The Incarnon form is semi-auto. For a weapon with this slow fire rate, it is very easy to overclick the shot and then you have to click again. This wastes more time and makes it frustrating to use. So as you can see, there is actually quite a long list of issues with the Incarnon form that make it objectively worse than the normal mode. I actually have one small Incarnon build I'll show you at the end, and then I'll compare it to a similar normal mode build so you can see the difference in practice. Okay, time to look at those builds. This first one is a rock corrosive setup that needs no primers, needs no other weapons in general, and manually reloads. But it's lightning fast. It uses the 2000% Incarnon Evolution 5 perk, so let's see what the rest of the tree will look like for this build. We take the negative crit chance and plus status chance Evolution 4 because it gives us more chances to proc the 2000% final damage buff. We will also be taking the reload perk that grants faster fire rate from Evolution 3 since we're manually reloading. This will save a slot on the weapon so we don't need shotgun spaz for fire rate. Every build today will use the plus 50% flight speed on Evolution 2, so this is the last time I will be mentioning that specific one. Let's see how it's built. Remember, we're using the 2000% Evolution 5 perk, that's why I actually skipped using a damage boosting weapon arcane. I opted for Fractalized Resets, an arcane that massively boosts the reload speed of your weapon by 240% when you cast abilities. This arcane is best used on weapons that reload one at a time, like Zar, or Corinth, or the Felarx. Just keep in mind the buff only lasts for 5 seconds, but it's refreshable. So this works best on frames with spammy skills and even better on ones that have minimal cast animations and would be required to use regardless as part of the standard kit rotation. Think of frames with grouping skills, or helmets, like Airburst, Larva, Ensnare, Coil Horizon, or other utility like Saren's Molta Shield Gate, Volt's Speed Buff, and among a few others. Those two are low-cost, instant cast abilities you can easily sustain on a more energy-efficient build to have near 100% uptime on Fractalized Reset. If you aren't using a spam-heavy frame setup, then I would not recommend using this build, but it is a one-stop shop setup that needs no primers, no holes to reload, no nothing except just dumping the mag and reloading and dumping it again. Luckily, shotguns have a primed mod for corrosive to boost raw damage setups further. We slot the usual galvanized multi-shot and prime point blank since we do not have a damage arcane for the 2000% perk to scale off of. Prime Banes are best in slot, and I would recommend keeping these because the shotgun doesn't actually have overwhelming damage like the Fenmore and Latum do. There are honestly very few mods that could even slot in as a replacement, but Blaze is probably the best alternative if you don't want to use this. Gun seal on this weapon is special. It is actually one of those weapons where it's multiplicative like Eclipse, so you absolutely need to have this on the weapon as it is a ridiculous damage buff on a pellet-based shotgun that will most likely apply several different status effects even if it doesn't max out stacks. The final two slots are filled with massive quality of life reloaded magazine mods. This is because, like I said, there is literally nothing else worth slotting. The magazine bonus doubles the shots you can fire before reloading, and let's be real, without ammo efficiency, the base magazine is almost unusable, even if you reload fast. The reload mod massively improves reload speed even without Fractalized Reset active, because Felarx reloads one shot at a time, meaning the full magazine reload time actually increases when we slot primed ammo stock on. Some builds today will not be able to slot galvanized acceleration, however, this build can fit it. This is another really important mod because the Felarx has a fall-off range of 14 to 28 meters. It's not too small, but here's the kicker. Damage falls from 100% to 1%. So at 28 meters, you literally do 0 damage, and even at 25 meters away, which isn't that far, you're already losing over 75% of your damage. So I would strongly recommend slotting this mod since at full stacks, you won't start losing any damage until 26.6 meters, which is a massive buff. Normally at 26.6 meters, you'd be losing 90% of your damage. Now you'll notice very quickly this shotgun uses up ammo insanely fast. Because we don't have space for mutation mods on this build, you will either have to run ammo scavenger auras, or carrier for ammo case, or even both. This is a downside only present on this build and will not be required for any of the other 3 main primary builds I show you today. But it does feel really good to use, right? So how does this work? Well, let's take a random frame. Like Saren for a molt, you basically just cast bolt once every 5 seconds and unload your magazine like this. The Evolution 3 perk grants fire rate per bullet reloaded, so the 13 magazine size means we get bonus plus 130% fire rate, on top of Arcane Tempo, which you should be slotting on your frame. Or you could use a grouping setup like anything with air bursts, basically just shoot into the clump, reload, be on your merry way to the next crowd, cast air bursts, dump your mag, etc. A standalone raw corrosive Felarx that works extremely well on Steel Path. Now let's look at a slash build with the 2000% perk. Since the weapon does not want to crit, we cannot use 100 munitions. But the weapon has crappy IPS splits, so we don't want to run viral on the weapon either since it will dilute slash too much. Now, that's perfect because this build uses the 50% holster reload perk, so we can use another weapon as a primer to apply viral while Felarx is reloading. Since we're on the 2000% Evo 5 perk, we stay on the minus crit chance plus status chance node, especially because the status bump will grant us more slash procs as well. So the mod setup is this. The bottom mods have stayed the same, except we've replaced primed reload for shotgun spaz, because we are holster reloading and no longer using the reload equals bonus fire rate perk. We only need one mod to boost slash instead of two to make corrosive, so this frees up a slot on the weapon for galvanized acceleration. We still have prime point blank for base damage since Gunseal is multiplicative, and we won't have any base damage before Merciless is up. Also, the Prime Magazine mod, because holster reload does percent total magazine per second, so increasing magazine size will not slow the reload as if you did it manually. Freeing up the slot for Galvanized Acceleration means we can now slot shotgun ammo mutation in the Exilus, because this weapon consumes an insane amount of ammo. This means we are no longer relying on ammo scavenger auras or carrier for ammo case, and you're free to run whatever pet you want, such as a Panzer. We've opted for Merciless this time, since we're holster reloading, so Fractalized is useless. We can't use Deadhead because we're killing with Slash. This build is actually meant for endurance, where even the high raw damage of the shotgun will stop killing enemies directly. For normal gameplay, this is kind of overkill, and I would recommend instead dropping Sweeping Serration and Prime Point Blank for the two corrosive mods and running Deadhead if you want to run a holster reload setup that is just raw damage. The primer I'm recommending for this are melee primers, because then you don't need to deal with the holster animation delay between guns. Also, if you're holstering to reload, consider slotting Vigor Swap on your frame, since you will be proccing it constantly anyways. It's a free 165% base damage, but the primer I'm using are these two. This is a Zorus build meant to apply a lot of viral stacks. It bounces around on a heavy throw and has infinite combo. Now, do not heavy detonate this, else you will lose all your combo stacks, and building combo on a glaive is a pain in the ass. Just let it bounce out and re-aim to constantly pull out Felarx to shoots. It should only take about 1.5 seconds to reload fully, since I would recommend bringing a stat stick pistol of any kind with synth charge, as well as a companion with two synth mods, so that you get 50% holster reload bonus from the synth set. Combining this with the 50% reload perk puts you at 65. Meaning you get a full magazine after 1.5 seconds. The alternative is this Contagion Zaw build. Now, it's not meant to apply a ton of viral stacks, rather it applies as many different statuses as possible to fuel the multiplicative Gunseal on Felarx. This one doesn't have infinite combo, so you probably want to take Neramon for power spike and slot Dexterity Arcane on your pistol to give it longer combo duration as well. Basically, you just go around dumping shots, then throwing whatever melee you had equipped, then go back to dumping shots. Your frame is free to bring whatever abilities and helmet they want, because unlike the first Felarx build, we have no reliance on ability spam to reload. How about a third build? This one actually doesn't use the 2000% Evolution 5 perk. You may think that means it's weak, but you'd be dead wrong. This is actually a crit viable build, so we have a lot more useful mods to slot. The weapon perks still offer enough utility that having to run crit doesn't bloat the build. We're going to be running the 70% ammo efficiency on Evo 5 if you're running Steel Path Survival. If you're running any other game mode, and especially normal star chart, then I would recommend considering the 50% ammo efficiency Evo 5. You can even stack it with the energized munitions if you want, but the 70% version with an unboosted magazine size will result in 20 shots. Since it's crit viable, we're taking the plus 10% crit chance and status chance perk on Evolution 4. We will be manually reloading the setup, so take the reload giving bonus fire rate perk from Evolution 3. Now, this is what the build looks like. The 4 bottom mods have returned again, and this time we don't increase magazine size since we have ammo efficiency. But we do increase reload speed to get those 6 shots back faster. We only get plus 60% fire rate from the reload perk instead of 130% like the first build, but combined with the arcane tempo on your frame, this is still enough. We have the 2 mods for corrosive again, including the primed one, but this time forgo primed point blank for the double crit mods primed ravage and critical deceleration. This boosts the weapon to 60% crit chance and a 4.2 multiplier. Deadhead is our arcane since we're going raw damage, and it's super easy to land headshot kills with a pellet-based shotgun. The extra headshot multiplier will also help in how we don't have prime point blank on the build. Now, the Eidolons is supposed to be vigilante supplies to give both ammo back like mutations, but also boost our crits more. However, polarity problems, as you can tell by all the builds I've been testing. Now, just be aware this build does not have spare slots for galvanized acceleration, so you do need to pay attention to your engagement distance, since being 28 meters away from something will literally tickle them. But this is another standalone build with no primer, and even no reliance on abilities. It reloads a bit slower than the first build, and you need to land punch through on 3 bodies at once to activate the 70% ammo efficiency for 20 seconds. Don't fret, it is refreshable, and like I said, use the 50% version if you're worried about enemy spawn rates and density. Our fourth build is most similar to a traditional shotgun setup. It's a slash-based one with viral hunter munitions. We use the exact same perk trees as build 3, 70% ammo efficiency for Steel Path Survival, or 50% efficiency for everything else, from Evo 5. The plus 10% crit chance and status chance from Evo 4, and the reloading giving you bonus fire rate from Evo 3. Because building viral hunter munitions requires 3 mods instead of the 2 for corrosive, I've had to drop the primed reload mod here. To compensate, I slotted chilling reload instead of the cold 60-60 since this weapon doesn't have too many issues on proccing viral. And the slash stacks are independent of status chance on the setup too. The remaining 5 mods are all the same. Double crit mods, galvanized multi-shot, primed bane, which double dips on slash setups for 2.4 times more damage, and gun seal for that sweet multiplicative scaling on this weapon. We even have space to slot vigilante supplies again for boosted crits and ammo mutation. Obviously, since it's a slash build, we run merciless this time, which also buffs our reload a little bit more that's needed since we don't have primed reload. We get a total of plus 60%, and honestly, although this is the slowest reloading build of the 4 at 2.2 seconds, for something that self-primes and also slashes reliably, that's the opportunity cost you will have to take. This build also can't slot galvanized acceleration, so once again, pay attention to engagement distance so that you actually still do damage. I would recommend trying this build on a frame that has reload buffs. Now, how about that last sneaky build I said I'd cover for the Incarnon form? Honestly, the best thing I got at the moment is a grouping setup with electric. This is what the build looks like. We have massive electric weight combining with a 60-60 and primed mod, better damage per proc, and more procs. Shotgun spaz since the fire rate on the Incarnon mode is literally half the normal mode and also semi-auto. I also had to slot Seeking Force because the Incarnon form for some reason loses the infinite body punch through the normal mode had. The bottom mods are the same mold though, galvanized multi-shot, primed base to double dipped electric procs for 2.4 times more damage, primed reload to transition to Incarnon mode faster. Alternatively, you can drop the reload mod for prime point blank here if you want. Then gun seal for multiplicative scaling, deadhead because electric procs can headshot and count towards the stacks if they kill, plus the headshot multiplier. So how does this perform? It works, but only with an actual grouping setup. Preferably in snare so we can consistently land headshot chains, but here's the problem. I can just take the corrosive normal build, group them up, and do this, and they die so much faster. So why bother using the Incarnon form as is? I really hope it does get buffed, as Danielle did say they're looking into it. You may wonder why I didn't bother to run viral hunting munitions on Incarnon since it seems to have actually usable crit and status. That's because the normal mode has infinite body punch through already and more raw damage. So why should I try to compete the Incarnon mode with this? The only way it should be able to pull ahead is AoE damage through status, since it doesn't have an actual true AoE even if it looks like it should and lacks the infinite body punch through. But the damage is bad enough that even the punch through raw damage setup of normal mode makes the electric Incarnon look like a joke. So there it is. Don't use the Incarnon mode if you want a better weapon. Sure, the electric build works, but everything works better in the normal mode. Hopefully DE finds a way to make the Incarnon form relevant in the near future. Then I might cover it again with a follow-up, but for now, I won't touch it. There you go, 4 very different normal mode Felarx setups for every playstyle. I actually really like planning and testing these out and how they were all very viable and different to play despite being a headache to theorycraft. Hopefully you'll find one that suits your playstyle, as even if the shotgun's normal mode isn't as strong as Fenmore and Latum, I do find it's actually very fun to play. Felarx is an example of a weapon with absolutely amazing Incarnon evolution perks to pick from. I just wish they released it with a functional Incarnon form. What did you think? If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'll try my best to get you new information out always, as soon as possible. Like I've done with covering the Echoes of Zariman update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You won't miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.